just listen. Guys, I have something important to communicate, so I've chosen a very cozy location, which is pretty much self-explanatory. I will talk about American foreign policy and its application to conflict management, conflict resolution strategies, particularly to the situation in Ukraine. Thank you very much for your attention. Today we have a wonderful day. I'm reporting from Washington DC on the 14th of September 2022, and today I want to discuss something very important about American foreign policy and its application in the Ukrainian conflict. Basically, from my research indicates that speaking of Brzezinski's doctrine is still very much in this house, because the current resident of this wonderful office, the White House, is relying on this American-Polish researcher to the very deep extent, because ever since 24th of February 2022, when Russia intervened in Ukraine, US and its allies decided to support Ukraine unconditionally. And this is based on very strategic thinking, on the old strategy which is developed in the heart of the Cold War. So this scholar, Zbigniew Brzezinski, was a national security advisor to President Carter between 1977 and 1981. And he decided, and he came up with the idea that there are certain red lines which Russia or Soviet Union shouldn't cross. And intervening in Ukraine is exactly crossing this red line. And Vladimir Putin decided to cross it anyway. And he faces massive consequences of his action simply because his army has shown that it's incompetent and it's unable to deal with the Ukrainian army, which isn't very strong after all. Yes, it's supported by NATO and by American allies, but even though with this support, Ukrainians are basically, let's say that they consist of the weakest army in this particular region of Central Europe. So Putin has overcalculated, and he thought that it will be easy win. He thought that he will win within few weeks. But no, Ukrainians surprised him, and because of that, he's no longer in a strong position to impose on us, on the Western countries, his will. He's the weakest he has ever been. Thanks to the fact that Brzezinski was in charge of certain aspects of American foreign policy whilst he was in the office, and thanks to the fact that he remained extremely influential in American foreign policy circles, countries like Poland, Czech Republic, Hungary, and other countries from Eastern Europe had the chance to join NATO. Without this one, the situation, the scenario which Putin served Ukraine on 24th of February 2022 would have been repeated not only in Ukraine, but also in Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, Poland, Slovakia perhaps, and Hungary. So let us not take for granted the transatlantic alliance, which is working so well for both Europe and United States. Of course, after the end of the Cold War, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, everyone was celebrating, so they didn't want to hear the scholar who suggested that Russia is going to be a trouble, especially when it was Russia of Boris Yeltsin, very weak, with the leader who was constantly drunk. So when in 1997 Brzezinski published his book, The Grand Chessboard, when he basically said that Russia is inherently inclined to show some imperialist attitudes towards Ukraine, because with Ukraine, Russia has a claim to the superpower position. Without Ukraine, Russia is just a country. So basically, based on this premise, page 46 by the way, based on this premise, Brzezinski was advocating in changing Western countries' policy towards Russia, but no one believed him. No one wanted to hear him. They started to listening to him in 2008, then in 2014, then in 2015, and now everyone came to the realization, oh yeah, Brzezinski was actually right.
he wasn't a Russophobe, he was just very cautious. And he basically warned us about that. But yeah, it's good to learn from someone else's mistakes, not your own mistakes. The rumor has it that when in 1979 Brzezinski learned that Soviets actually intervened in Afghanistan, he started jumping in euphoria and he was like so happy. And they asked him, "Why are you so happy?" He said, "Because I know that Russia, the Soviet Union, has just entered into a massive trap. They will have their own Vietnam War." So I can only presume that on 24th of February 2022, if Brzezinski was alive, he would react in the same fashion. Simply because he would predict that the Russian army will ultimately lose. And that is exactly what is happening on the Ukrainian front now. It is not the Russians who are taking initiative. It is Ukrainians who are securing the counteroffensive, and they are gaining like 3,000 square kilometers of land. So Russia is on the receiving line, and Putin's position is the weakest it has ever been. And that's thanks to Brzezinski's doctrine. Because Washington and its allies started to implement Brzezinski's doctrine and Brzezinski way of thinking, that has it that Russia has to be constrained within its borders, and the Russian imperialist policy should be stopped. Implementation of this policy creates tangible success, because after 2008 intervention in Georgia, and after 2014 annexation of Crimea, and after Russian intervention in Syria, Putin was in a very strong position, and we were just observers. We were just observing what will he do next. And even in February, when in the first days, first weeks of the operation, his war on Ukraine, even then we thought that Ukraine will lose a lot of territory. But thanks God, the Western countries came together and started supporting Ukraine. Thanks to this support, we can see that independent Ukraine will be still in the map of the Europe. So what gave Putin this sense of confidence? This feeling that he can go and conquer independent countries? Well, on one hand, surely it is a fact that in the West we did not react to his aggressive policy towards Georgia in 2008, or Ukraine in 2014, or Syria in 2015. And he thought that the same will happen in Ukraine in 2022, that we would get scared. Well, he basically overplayed his cards here. But it's also something which we need to take in consideration. Also, it has to do with the US foreign policy towards Middle East. Because the very fact that in the Trump years, the US decided to withdraw from Afghanistan, Iraq, and a little bit of Syria, created the impression that US will not be as engaged in European or Asian affairs as it used to be. So on this basis, Putin was convinced that we're on our knees. But again, he was wrong. So if Joe Biden or another Democrat will stay in this office after the president elections of 2024, we might be certain that the current policy of supporting Ukraine will prevail. If for any reason Donald Trump goes back to this office as an elected head of state, we need to brace ourselves for another 4 years of isolationist policies of American president. And that's the center of global power. By any standards of imagination, the person who stays in this building, in the Oval Office, determines the way not only the American foreign policy is shaped, but also the global policy. So it's in our best interest in Europe for Democrats to stay in this office. If there was one thing which Donald Trump was right about, was the fact that European allies from Poland, Germany, France, Italy, Great Britain they don't spend as much as on defense as they should. In the uncertain reality of the post-February 2022, we have all responsibilities to modernize our armies and be a better partner in NATO's struggle against Russia and NATO struggle to support Ukraine. So what's the main intake from the research on Brzezinski? Basically, in my opinion, the strongest message with Brzezinski sends is the fact that Russia is not to be trusted. It's not only about Putin, it's about Russia and its imperial ambitions. The weak Russia will be happy to compromise, they will be happy to accommodate certain requests. But the strong Russia cannot be democratic. Strong Russia will inevitably be expansionist, imperialist, and with ambitions to conquer countries which are bordering this country. And that's pretty much sad because it's the biggest country in the world with 17 million square kilometers. So Russia does not need more territories. Russia just needs stability, peace and development. Russia needs some jobs, some proper jobs for its people, for people to enrich themselves. But that's the democratic thinking. That's, we have in our countries that, manage the unemployment, manage the inflation, allow people to have some opportunities. In Russia, everything is directed towards the well-being of one man, and this is Vladimir Putin. He cares nothing about his citizens. I suppose the most valuable lesson from my research visit in DC is the fact that conflict resolution strategy or conflict resolution literature is no longer applicable. The new wave is conflict management, which means that these guys came to terms with the fact that certain conflicts are not to be resolved. You cannot resolve certain conflicts and you just need to manage them. And this is applicable to the Middle East, to Nagorno-Karabakh. Basically, a couple of days ago, the new outburst of hostilities between Armenia and Azerbaijan resulted in more than 100 casualties. Just whilst I was basically recording one of the videos for you. And this is sad, but this is also reality. There is nothing romantic about war. We just need to manage it, and we need to find a way to manage it in a relatively reasonable manner. And the best language to talk with Russia is the language of strength. So Russia doesn't understand the idea of peaceful reconciliation. They need to be taught a strong lesson. This is what Brzezinski tells us. Brzezinski tells us, don't trust Russia, don't trust Putin. Because even if Putin is gonna be replaced, he will be replaced by the same hawkish leader who will basically jeopardize the regional stability. So the second most important lesson which I would like to share with you guys is the fact that the members of Russian political establishment, they don't understand the notion of international law, the particular notion of self-restraint. They just attack independent countries whom they have a border with. And the best way to change that is to actually ask them to read their literature, maybe Fyodor Dostoevsky, Crime and Punishment. The notion that there is a crime and the crime is followed by the punishment. They never been tried in Nuremberg after Chechnya or Georgia or after the 2015 intervention in Syria. Basically, Russian conduct in foreign affairs has never been properly tried. So they feel that they can do whatever they want. And that is something which international lawmakers need to think about. The question remains, should we keep Russia as the member of UN Security Council? The very council which should protect the international peace and security. So if the P5 member of UN Security Council decides to violate the international rules and law,
maybe they should stop being a part of this body. That would be beneficial for the global peace. Thank you very much for that, and best regards from Washington DC on this wonderful day.